Welcome back to another episode of Veritas Live. I am your host, Jonny King, broadcasting to you live from bright, sunny, stormy Orlando, Florida. I'm on the 50th floor of the Veritas satellite office that really is just my home office. And really not the 50th floor, but I'm a little out of shape, so sometimes it feels like it. But I want to know where you are tuning in from. Where are you watching us from? Are you in a satellite office? Are you in a home office? Let us know in the comments below, and let us know what other questions that you have. We've got experts out there ready to play some conversational tennis, so get us involved. Let's get a rally going. Let's have some fun today. Now, this may be the first time you're tuning into an episode of Veritas Live, or maybe you have watched every episode meticulously, painstakingly, taken notes, printed out transcripts. I know we've got a couple of you out there, a couple of super fans. Regardless of how many episodes you've seen, I am very glad you are here with us today, because today is a very special episode. Today marks 1 year of Veritas Live, and we're just going to go ahead and call this Season 1. So big round of applause, uproarious applause. I can hear it out there. So we thought it would be fitting to take a look back at some of the memorable moments that really stood out to us over the last year. In an earlier episode around cybersecurity, we had hosted Karen Evans, a former chief information officer for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, as well as Joseph Davis, the security officer for healthcare in the United States for Microsoft. They shared some critical insights on how this new reality is affecting all of us and some of the consequences coming out of it. So let's tune in.
Joseph, I want to start with you. What was the biggest wow moment you've had so far in regards to cybersecurity or threats?
Well, I've had a few, but I think anytime cybersecurity crosses over into the physical world, that's my real wow moment. I think battling Stuxnet back, and I remember the date, it was July 10th, 2010, at the organization where I was CISO for a while. Stuxnet had entered our environment through a USB storage and had started attacking our file servers, looking for Siemens centrifuge equipment. But we didn't know that at the time. And I think the real wow moment was when we were starting to, we were able to isolate it. And I had some folks on my staff start to reverse engineer the code and look at the code. And they were very surprised in the sense that they had never seen anything like it before. It had no comments, et cetera. So that was a real wow moment in terms of understanding how a cybersecurity event can affect a physical environment and potentially cause harm to a human.
It's amazing. I feel like I just got a mini movie in the description of that story. Karen, what about you? What was the biggest wow moment in your career so far?
I agree with Joseph. There's a lot of wow moments if you work in this industry, but my first one was in 1996 at the Department of Justice. And Attorney Janet Reno said that she wanted to send an email out to all 170,000 employees. And I was in a meeting and I asked, hey, what happens if somebody answers back? That delayed the project for a couple months because all the lawyers had to jump in on that. And in the meantime, what happened was we were the first federal government website ever to be hacked. And so we had the head of our attorney general on the naked body of Jennifer Aniston. And my boss kept saying to take the website offline, take the website offline. And then the technical team said they did. And that's how we learned about caching and how the whole internet worked and why we couldn't get rid of that particular website and all of the redundancies of why the internet does what it does. So it was a very eye-opening experience for a lot of reasons.
Well, alarming, but insightful. Now, we were also very fortunate to have our guest, Vice Admiral Nancy Norton, to discuss WMDs, that's Weapons of Mass Disruption, and cyber threats on the global stage. Let's roll the clip.
We got to talk before this episode last week, and you kind of blew my mind. You educated me around this topic of the global commons. It's something I'd never heard about before. And I'd love for you to share with our audience some of the information that you gave to us beforehand. So from a Vice Admiral's perspective, let's talk all about the global commons and what should everyone know about the state of the world today.
Sure. So Anthony, for you and your audience, of course, I come from the naval background. And so a lot of the perspective that I have on everything that we do comes from that, my 34-year career in the Navy. And one of the main missions of the United States Navy is to protect the global commons. And so for the U.S. Navy, that's patrolling the seas, making sure that the oceans and seas are available and free for navigation. And when you think about how interconnected the world is today, it's been that way for decades and really a couple of hundred years, where global trade has been so vital for the development of humanity, really. And without that, with things like piracy and not being able to get to certain places, things just stop. Our interconnectedness, our global trade grinds to a halt. And you can even see examples of that when it's accidental, like, for example, when the ship got stuck in the Suez Canal, that really stopped global trade or slowed down global trade for weeks. And so that freedom of navigation of the global commons is just something that is really vital. And the more interconnected we are as a global society, the more important those global commons become. Everybody is always talking about WMD, weapons of mass destruction.
Right.
And since the late 90s, I've thought of cyberspace and cyber attacks as being WMD as well, weapons of mass disruption. So when we talk about the global commons, we talk about the kinds of disruption that can happen in cyberspace by cyberspace operations and whatever cause that might be. Those really can be mass disruptive operations or events in our world.
I loved getting to hear from Vice Admiral Nancy Norton, but moving right along into our next important topic, zero trust, which really just refers to the security philosophy stemming from trust nothing, verify everything. Now, some of you know people with that philosophy, but seriously, what the purpose is for organizations to grant access only to confirmed, authorized, safe users, safe network processes, systems to prevent against bad actors from gaining access and doing damage, thus defending us against the ever-emerging threats like ransomware. So in our next clip, we'll hear from Sally Eves, cybersecurity expert on the 3 pillars of this important concept. Let's listen in.
When companies say they're offering zero trust, what does it really mean? Sally, I'll start with you again.
I have kind of 3 main pillars when I could discuss this. So continual verification, massively important, moving beyond users to workloads, and also the evolution of security ops, I think is hugely important too. So on the tech side, that's my 3 pillars. But my key message, hey, you need to look at all these things and bring them together. Don't treat them separately.
Sally summed it up well, but it is a lot to take in. Luckily, we are surrounded by a team of experts here on Veritas Live, answering your questions, sharing your knowledge. So get ready and start utilizing your resources right now. We have a team of people ready to help you navigate the high seas of cyber threats. But as you're doing that, typing in your comments and engaging with us, let's move into another important topic, cloud adoption. We have Sally joined with Veritas experts Tim Barlowski and Dan Rodriguez, and I love this clip. Hearing Tim and Dan talk hardware and cloud adoption is always a treat, so enjoy.
Sally, what are you seeing when you're talking about these emerging technologies, and what do you see might be the next step as this shift really accelerates?
Absolutely. I think we'll touch on it a little bit later, probably in terms of convergence, but that's where we are for me. It's cloud, but how it's fitting together with other technologies as well. It's all about business growth in terms of research as well. Something I saw literally only in the last week, new survey saying $414 billion annual profit is now linked to cloud computing. And it's all around business growth, competitive edge, increasing speed, etc. as well. So I'm really excited to see that.
Right now, the hardware shift is definitely moving towards the cloud, but we can't forget about the private clouds, the companies that own data centers across the world. And right now, of course, if you're a startup, the last thing you want to do is build a huge data center in a building you may not own. So cloud is, of course, first thing to go. But for example, those companies that have that ownership of that building and building out that data center, you can't forget about the hardware innovations that are going into that data center. I mean, 10 years ago, think about how large a data center was and how it is now with virtualization and how it's going to be in the future with containerization moving forward.
Oh, totally. And I was just talking to a guy the other day. He's fighting with tier one server vendors because he wants to immerse his servers in this sort of crazy fluid that boils at just below the server's operating temperature so they can evaporate the heat away from things. And I'm like, I'm losing my mind. This is like no longer the realm of crazy hobbyists, but they're talking about exabyte scale kind of virtualization infrastructure. I'm like, wow.
I love it when Tim Berlowski goes full on Steve Jobs on his wardrobe on camera. Bravo. Great info and insight as always. This year, we had our second episode on Kubernetes, and we had a chance to hear from Stephen O'Grady, the co-founder of RedMonk, and Tushar Katarki from Red Hat on market adoption, as well as our very own legendary Joe D'Angelo, senior product manager here at Veritas, talking about taking full advantage of the infrastructure. Let's hear what they had to say.
So I think the current state of Kubernetes, I think the simplest way to describe it is that it's effectively the enterprise substrate, right? In the sense that, if you go back enough years, there were, sort of a number of competing container orchestration options. And frankly, if you go back even further, we had a number of different sort of application platforms, J2E sort of being the most notable of those. And Kubernetes is effectively that today, right? It's a substrate on which huge swaths of enterprise infrastructure run. And, what we've seen over time is just this sort of steady progression of, Kubernetes starts in one area, and then there's areas where we're not going to use it for that, or we can't use it for that. And, the next quarter, the next couple quarters, the next year or two, it ends up being used for the things that people said it couldn't do. So, yeah, I think when we speak with people today, basically, I think the simplest description is that it is just that. It's a substrate for, a huge majority at this point of, sort of what enterprises want to do from a technical infrastructure perspective.
Where Kubernetes came in really was the idea that, okay, look, I mean, if you want to deploy this as an application is typically more complex than just one container. And especially if you want that container, I think a useful analogy that I thought was interesting has been made is kind of the post office analogy in which, you want to send, packages or letters, and you put it in a package and you just send it out with an address and a destination. You put a stamp, and that sends you wherever. And that's effectively what Kubernetes did for this, which was missing if you can't just have a container format. And so that's what Kubernetes did. And since then the adoption has been tremendous.
Kubernetes and in general, the container ecosystem has really delivered on the promise of virtualization, right? This idea, I like to call it as all the flavor and none of the calories, where you can truly take full advantage of the infrastructure and exploit it to its ultimate potential, and bridge the divide between what was a development effort and a truly an infrastructure need. So it's an exciting time, and I'm just glad to be part of it.
All right, we are throwing a lot of past episode nostalgia your way. I hope you are remembering all of these knowledge nuggets from yesteryear. As a newbie MC to Veritas Live, I enjoyed getting brought up to speed on some of those memorable moments in season 1. But I've got to know, what was your favorite episode from last season? What was your favorite moment? Tell us in the comments below. And of course, to watch any of these episodes in their entirety, subscribe to our playlist on YouTube. There's a lot of great episodes to choose from, so make sure you do that. Now, we have an exciting season 2 in store for you next year, but we are always looking for more ideas and topics that are top of mind to you. So send in your questions, send in your ideas, post them in the comments below. We want to make sure that we are talking about things that are top of mind, and we are helping you solve those most pressing data management concerns. During our last episode, we had a poll asking for your input on some of these topics, and 65% of you voted to hear more discussions around multi-cloud data management. Well, we hear you loud and clear. My colleague, guest of the show, Sonia Duffin, she recently published a blog post outlining some of those cloud trends we're seeing and some of the challenges that come with multi-cloud data management. So be sure to check that out. A lot of good information there. With that, I hope you enjoyed the highlights episode, Navigating the Data Madness. Thank you for watching. Thank you for commenting. I'm excited about season 2. I'm excited to see you then. Thank you so much. Cheers.